So my mother is Clarice, and I grew up in Vancouver. My mother was apprehended when she was about 8 years old. She was a fluent Cree speaker. My grandfather was a trapper. They lived off the land in a place called Cheecham Village, which is called Fort McMurray First Nations number 468. So she grew up in a convent, and then she was also part of the 60 Scoop and was adopted out into a French Catholic family because they knew that once the children left the residential school, they weren't functioning the way that they wanted them to function as being the workers in the workforce. So they had taught them how to sew and to clean, and thinking this would be a great way to get the First Nations to go into public and be domestic workers. But what happened when they left the residential school, they just didn't even function at all. And so they thought, well, a way to do that was to assimilate them a lot faster, was to have them be apprehended and taken right into Canadian homes, and they would learn how to live that way and be assimilated much faster into the society. So she was adopted, and then when she was 18, she moved to Vancouver, and she became a part of the Red Power movement, and at the same time of the Civil Rights movement. She met Huey Newton, all those from the Black Panthers. She met, and it's funny, and I'm going to say that that's who I had come from. And my mother reconnected with her mother when she turned 60 years old, and my grandmother was 80, and they moved back in together, and she learned how to speak Cree once again, and she's still there. And in the time when she was living in Vancouver, she was also part of Carnegie, and she was one of the co-founders of the first Women's Memorial March that we have every year in February 14th to acknowledge the 1,200 missing Aboriginal women here in Canada. But when she first got involved, she became friends with a lot of the young natives that were all trying to find a place within the urban settings. And they got together and they became the Native Alliance for Red Power, which came out of an article in the paper when a woman was killed in the downtown east side and her breasts were mutilated and left in a dumpster. And in the paper where it was announced that the offenders, that they call them, got a $200 fine. As well, in the same paper, 2 other hunters that were hunting moose at a season also got a $200 fine. So this brought a group of youth together because they realized that they needed to have, they started the Biotic Patrol, where they would patrol and protect those in the downtown east side, and they wore these really cool berets, and they would walk women home, and always knowing that we were always on the front line of this war that was hidden in Canada. And one of these people that she met was my father, during that time, there was one other guy that she had met, and he was the son of George Manuel, and George Manuel was really instrumental in our fighting for our rights legally. So if you know the Potlatch Band, there was a time where we couldn't sing our songs, we couldn't dance our dances, we couldn't perform our ceremonies, we couldn't talk about law, we couldn't be in a setting where there's more than 3 First Nations in a place to talk about anything political for a whole generation. So you couldn't leave the reserve, you'll get arrested. You couldn't hunt out of season without you getting arrested. And neither could anybody enter a reserve or you will get arrested. So there was always a segregation that was always there. So we always know that, and they don't tell this history still to this day. Things are changing slowly, but this history I might have to just so we can get the context of what I'm going to show you. So, but what happened was all these people were getting arrested. Everyone was getting arrested because they didn't want their kids to go to residential school. Boom, got arrested. They, left in there, got arrested. They didn't, But what happened was they didn't build jails enough to segregate these Native people in the jails so that they wouldn't meet and discuss and talk and strategize. So these people in jail was like, that probably wasn't part of their strategy plan when they had the potlatch band. Because in the jails is that when the Native Brotherhood first began. And the Native Brotherhood came out of there. Once they got out of prison, they learned their laws, and they studied it, and they studied and studied, and they shared amongst each other this language that was foreign to them, the language that wasn't taught about their rights and Aboriginal title, and all these things that we still struggle with, the language that was, because in the meantime, we were just surviving, and all these laws were piled and piled and piled and piled, so that when we were able to address them, it became overwhelming. But we always knew who we were, and we always knew where we came from, and there was always this connection to lands. And I think, so when I was up in Fort McMurray at the time, and it was this really strange time, because for those who know me on Facebook, I like social media. I love to share everything and show my pictures and recipes and, just what's happening, my kids. And there was this really odd time when there was about 3 days in between there. I had no cell phone and I had no internet access. And it was during this really odd time where it was my first real experience with the Fort McMurray First Nations Athabasca Treaty Council Conference, Treaty Days, where everybody gathers and has, there was all this money put into by Nexus, Suncor, Syncrude, all of the industries that are there, part of the tar sands, were funding the Treaty Days. It was this big celebration, and the RCMP stands there all in full regalia, and it's like scorching hot, and it's red brim, and giving out $5 to everybody, because that was the treaty. And everyone gets their crisp $5, and they get their photograph with it. And to me, I just thought it was bizarre. And then this lady was selling crafts said, Did you hear about Mount Polley? I'm like, Mount Polley? I was like, what's Mount Polley? You didn't hear what happened to Mount Polley? It is the biggest tailings pond spill in the world. I'm like, where's that? And it's like, BC. And we're like, it's this mine company goes out, Imperial Metals. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. I was like, well, what happened? Explain it to me. So she gave me the rundown, and then the way that she described it was these, in a way that, because I don't get what metric cubic tons are, right? Like to fathom, like she's like metric millions and metric million tons. And she's just like, there was a constant river that just ripped through the mountain, and she said it was like, it was the way she explained it though. I got it, and then. I couldn't focus. I had to go straight. I remember I had to go home, and then I just phoned my spouse, who was laying in Port Alberni waiting for me with my other little ones. And I said, I'm just going to go, when I go home, I'm just going to stop at this place called Mount Polley. But my first instinct was to call a friend of mine who's Tsilhqotin. So I heard it was in Tsilhqotin, in the heartland of the rainforest in Tsilhqotin territory. So right away, I think of my friends, the Manuel family, and when her and I and the friends met, we had thought we had just known each other, not knowing the history that our parents had, and then the history that our grandparents have had around resistance, and we are just these children of these warriors, right? So I called her, and she was in the States, and she's like, I heard, and she's like, meet me up there. Is anybody doing anything? That's my first thing, because I got contacts all over Canada, and probably know the most wanted, and in a good way. And when I called her, and she goes, okay, what's going on? I haven't heard anything. What are we going to do? She goes, I'll meet you there. We'll go in there. She had just dropped in at a Tsilhqotin gathering of all the nations, and they had met, and they had a sacred fire going on for 3 days, and the Tsilhqotin dropped all of their tribal stuff to talk about what had happened in the heartland of their territory. So she said the fire went on for three days, and there was all this discussion, the elders, and they said, what the message came out of that was, we need to have a fire. We need to go there and have a fire, and we need to pray for the land. Because people were walking around and dazed. They were like crying. She said the elders are crying by the river. She said the people are scared to eat the fish in town. She said it's bad. It's really bad. I came in with my 3 daughters, like leaving the tar sands, and then I'm going to the worst tailings pond spill in the world. And I was with a group of elders from the Tsilhqotin and women, and they guided us to start the fire right at the entrance of Mount Polley. It was the first time we ever went there. And And we were scared because we didn't know if we could even breathe the air. Everything felt weird. There was an energy in there that you couldn't explain, but you know that it was off. Like it just felt wrong. You felt it. It was beautiful and eerie, and something was off. There was a metallic kind of taste in the back of your throat. We just made the fire, and then from the fire, not knowing, we put the prayers down. Then it rained, and there was beautiful songs that were sung. And Alexandra Morton came into our fire right at that time, and because she was doing stuff around how the impact it was on our salmon. And it was about the fourth day. Then the locals started coming to our fire. They were first curious at first, like, what are you guys doing here, And then they came in and they sat down and they're like, what are you doing? We just have a fire. It's for prayers. Do you want to put some tobacco down? We're here to pray. We're here to, And they sat down at the fire and then they told us their story. And it was the first time I've ever been to, I've been to roadblocks and occupations and different kinds of forms of action throughout my life. But it was the first time that I had where it was just this. They were searching for us. They were searching for us, and they were so happy we were there. And it was this weird thing, like they're actually happy we're here, because nobody was doing something. They said that the Mount Polley would come in every week, and they would have this community forum, and they would have a dinner provided by the community. And the community was scared because they still want the mine. It was this really weird dynamic that was happening. And so when they came in, they told us about the story about how living with this mine had been for them. It had been a nightmare for them. And it was just this giant end. They got bigger and bigger and bigger until it literally blew. And they all moved there out of these urban areas to go to a quiet setting in the beautiful, nestled in the rainforest in the middle of the interior. And it's so gorgeous. It was the place of the caribou, which are no longer there anymore. But when... and I gotta wrap it up. So
when you're ready.
Okay. So I want to prep you for this. So I filmed everything. I filmed all this. So can I take your story? And so as I'm getting all this, I'm the one who's filming. Kind of we're getting. And one of our friends, her name was Anushka, and Anushka, she is this East Indian woman that is in law school, but she didn't get her dissertation. She still hadn't got it. And she came in, she was looking at the law, and she's like, this is this. And we were getting all this information that was given to us, that they were just spewing all these secrets to us, all the who works where, what they're doing, who was on that time, who was getting kicked off there, who all this information they were sharing with us. And then it seemed like a big responsibility, but mostly, they were just happy that they could even share, just to sit down, because they were scared. They had bought this property. This one guy said he had called the realtor that Friday, and it was a long weekend, and he was thinking of moving his place, and he was looking at moving. And then on that Monday, it had happened, like early Monday, and he never got a call, and all of a sudden, all their property was nothing, and they don't own anything. They don't know if they can drink the water, and nobody's listening to them, and they're just getting this feedback from the Imperial Metals. Everything's fine. We get the scientists. They get their E. coli report every week, and they are free drinking water. But you could tell that the water definitely changed colors. And it was the largest fjord lake in North America. North America. We got a lot of lakes. We have thousands of lakes. It's one of the largest with caverns. And one of the things that we did with my friend, her name was Kana, she had called the elder, and she said, what is this name? We want to call it something. Call it in Tsilhqotin, how do we refer to it? And she said, and Kalila, you may have to say it because I still... Kalila? 200 pit houses were all along that waterway, and how there was a certain rites of passage that you had to take just to go across it, because the way that this lake was that when the winds blew, it kind of went up like they've never seen the kind of storms that this lake could create with the waves, that it was like you were on an ocean sometimes in the wintertime. So they would have to paint their face a certain way and say a certain prayer just to cross across it. That's how much respect they had for this lake. And but there was so that the bones are still all around there, because when the smallpox, it literally wiped them out overnight, and that nobody could take the bodies of how many people had passed away in that short period of time, that the bones are still there within the pit houses along that area. So we learned that, and so about the fourth day is when Kanahoos, my friend Kanahoos Manuel, myself with the video camera, Anushka, we grabbed our shovels, and we had with us a bundle of medicines. We said we need to do a blessing to the water and actually touch the water. Okay. So
Sorry, I'm gonna resize it.
okay, and then we had APTN there, kind of like following along, you know, as people, because we still need that this message had to be out there. And what happened is, what it did was this Hazeltine Creek was a creek that was about 2.5 meters, like literally it was about this big. You could jump over it. There was a little road that went across it to get to the other side. It was just a tiny creek that went along there. And for how the breach went, and also know that the breach that did this, there's only like 25% of that tailings like came out of, the rest of it was still up there. It was so huge. Imperial Metals was working non-stop, day and night, and quadrupling its workload to make enough money to start up the Red Chris mine at this time. Tim Fish was the manager at that time. It was okaying. Like a child could tell you that this was going to, like, there was nowhere to go. Like, and you don't have to be a scientist to know that it was already spilling for years, and everybody knew it. And but nobody wanted to tell, right? They don't want to lose their job. So we got down, and what it did was when it came down, it tore through this Hazeltine Creek, kind of following where this little creek would have been, and like ripped out. And this here was about 30 feet. So I don't know how many feet that is, but it was 30 feet in length and gouged it out. And about two size of these, if you could see the amount of sheer force that it came. And some people say like nobody was killed, but if there was somebody killed, maybe there would be, more. But it ravished the environment, just brutalized it in a way that, and it transformed it and kind of left this silt. And it was like a glacier. So when we went down, it was so far to get down to the water, and like you said, it was 30 foot full of this gray sludge. And some of it was hard. You weren't sure. It was like walking on the glaciers, like in summertime. You were kind of iffy about when you would go in. But we would make sure it was hard enough, and we got down close. And we knew because it was still flowing 2 weeks after the spill. It was still flowing like pretty intensely. And when she reached in to put the bundle close to the water, she slooped. You can see her. She's covered in it. And we had keeping it together the whole time, and we were actually surprisingly calm because we had spent 4 days before we got enough nerve to even go to the site. And then we're like, wow, this is really messed up. But it almost seemed like we were outside of each other, kind of like I can't really describe it, but it was kind of like eerily beautiful in a way. Everything was still. And it had created this really weird landscape, and it just seemed so surreal, like so not real. And it was when, and I'm going to show this clip, and I haven't been able to watch it, but I want you to imagine then what I was thinking at that time. Everything just compiled, and I was filming, and then when she fell, I went to grab her, but I was too scared to grab her. I was too scared to help her, and then I lost it. And so it's still going to film, and I know I'm going to take you to a whole other place than what you've kind of been led up to. And this is the real raw emotion of when, and I'm crying, and I'm thinking, what have we done? What have we done? Knowing I didn't personally do that, but meaning like, it is part of what we have done to Earth, what we have done. And what I was so scared of was right away I thought, I have 8 children. I love children. And I love I love human beings. And I love them. I was like, what have we done for them? And so this was my complete fear and utter and I think I'm going to take you there. And I said to Kalila, and I go, should I like just take them there? Because I could tell this story. And then I want you to look around, and it's and I haven't seen it, and it's everything that's me in the most vulnerable place. And so if you can cue that up, and I'm gonna Okay. We're gonna be strong. We're gonna be strong. We're gonna do everything we're gonna do, hey? Everything. That's it. That's it. It's over. It's over. And no more. No more. It's over. It's over. You're done. You're done. You're done. It's over. My feet. Oh, you're gonna be okay. That wasn't so bad. And I think that was as real as I can explain it. There was genuine, we were on, and then there was anger, and then it was like, and I came and I left with that, like, it will never, ever, Imperial Metals will ever step foot here in Clayoquot Sound. And I say that with clarity and with strength that it will never happen. And that was the same as one of the young men that left, that we had met around the second day, and he was Tsilhqotin, young man, and there was some Native people they were working with because they got together. The government said, "How are we going to deal with it?" They worked with the local bands, with the Williams Lake Band and Soda Creek Band, and they had a bunch of money that they were going to put together. And they're saying that there was going to be these Native representatives overseeing the damage and overseeing the cleanup. And so every day there was they had a job and they went in and you could say by the second day this young man pulled over and was like, "What are you guys doing? You have this fire going." And he had these West Coast Native designs of tattoos all up and down his arm. And he says, and we wanted to, like, how what does it look like up there? Like, they were not letting anybody up there. And he goes, "Oh, I've seen it." He goes, "I took some pictures," and he showed us his phone, and we got to see like a little bit of what it. He goes, and then he goes, "I'm Tsilhqotin," and he goes, "You know that we've fought." Again, the story that Drew had told earlier, and he was from that area, and he was from Fish Lake, and he had been a part of that, and he said with a certainty and a clarity and a strong, "It'll never happen. It'll never happen. They will never come to Fish Lake." And he goes, "I'm going to show these to my people, and I'm going to give them even more strength and empowerment to do what they have to do to make sure that by any means necessary, that it does not happen. That imperial metals does not come in your back door, does not sneak in, and one of the things that's happening with that is with the First Nations, they come out with this consultation process and like a good way to mine from a First Nations perspective. And I'm really not terrified of that, but I'm really concerned about that kind of other way of saying, sure, we'll take, because mining's not so bad. Mining's part of our economy, and it's not that bad. And, so let's do it the right way. And let's, bring the First Nations along with us on this journey and make sure we're part of everything and make sure that, I'm concerned about that. Because I don't think that there's any sustainable mining at all. Zero. I mean, it's not like we're back in the days with the pans and doing that. Like, if you're going to do that, sure, that'd be okay. It's sustainable. I think that's the only sustainable mining is you all got your own pan. You go in there and you go through the din. That's it. That's done. Anything other, but we're not operating like that anymore. We're not operating. There is true evil in this world, and that mining corporation is one of them. Nestle is another one, is trying to, there's true evil that don't care about any human, any life, or anything other than profit and what it takes to get to it. And let's close with something. And, so I don't think that there's sustainable mining in that way. And I think that our economy really needs to make right now, our big focus that we have is the climate change, and there's no way around it. I come through the tar sands in the last 2 years. I was part of 3 record floods. The biggest flood to ever shut down the tar sands, I was there. They evacuated Fort McMurray and Fort McMurray First Nations, and the water had nowhere to seep once it filled the largest tailings ponds in the world in the tar sands. So once the water nobody's talking about the signs that happened after that flood. It seeped into everything and everywhere because the water had no more the absorbency for it to take the water that it was taking from the sky. So it was just getting into the tailings ponds and just going and spilling everywhere. And there's no science, and I know that it's bad. Nobody talked about that flood that happened. And that we're in Port Alberni just this winter. We had 2 record floods. We had to evacuate our home from that little river in Somas River. And I know that I was also part of that settlement there when that earthquake hit. And this is it. There should be no mining, zero. Right now, we need to shift gears as a human race and shift gears in a way that's sustainable because it's going to hit harder and harder. And they're taking our water right before our eyes. They're bringing in more pipelines, more fracking, more of everything is coming in on all fronts, all over the place. And they're not going to stop because we live in the most pristine, water-rich country and right in this kind of area that we have, and everybody needs it, especially the United States. So those pipelines may not be a sure thing, but it will carry water at one point, and that's what I believe. So I don't know where I want to take you, but I wanted to shift gears that whatever means necessary, where it's the law that we need to go, change policies with our mayor, with our relationships what we have into government, but it's the way we need to look and change our ways as human beings and how we are relating to our planet and to our environment. And if it comes from the Indigenous peoples, those histories, that name that we shouted in the very end there, Tsilhqotin, very badly, but we're reconnecting to the language of the land, from the histories of the people, through the relationship that land has to the people, comes through the language, I believe, and that history. And that's what I'd like to leave with today. And thank you all for
Thank you.